So I guess it's just you and me.
I didn't have my sound on.
Oh, people are coming in like mad.
Yeah, well, you know, Dan Szymborski, when you're selling Szymborski, people come piling in.
Yeah. Hey, I was able to successfully get the sports analytics articles for the Informs Professional Society, the operations research. I got 2 of them.
Oh, good.
I was nagging you, if you remember.
Yes. I don't want to close my door and get too much glare.
Oh, wearing my baseball cap. Get my Cubs cap.
That's what I need to wear one too. Da, 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 da. Chat amongst yourselves. I'm just going to be clicking this admit button as fast as I can while people come piling in.
How many registered?
I have no idea. But Scott Bush is here. He might know. He doesn't know.
I don't know.
Because everybody's piling in. We'll see what I'm going to text Szymborski in case he's asleep at the switch.
I hate to be selfish, but this is easier than driving to Carborough.
Oh, that's not. Scott and I were talking about that the other day. People aren't going backwards, right? That's just not going to happen. So, very exciting. Indig. Oh, it's just now noon. So, being there 1 minute early, it's everyone's showing up, all the regulars. Of course, it's also easier this way because no one can go anywhere. What are you doing? A friend of mine was like, how's the weather? I was like, I have no idea. And he said, I thought you would be on top of weather. And, you know, it's like, I'm going to sit in my house or work in my yard. So it's either raining or it's not. That's pretty much the sum total of what the weather has for impact on me at this point. And whether or not it's flooding my basement.
Huh.
I don't have a basement. If I did.
You know, I'm not overly religious, but we should probably start with the prayer. There's been a lot of big ball players have died this last year.
Oh, man.
Holy mackerel. Some really great ones.
It was like 8 Hall of Famers, something like that. That might just be the calendar year. There were 8.
I think there were 8 in the calendar year. There's already been 1 or 2 this year, right?
Oh, oof. Well, the number of Hall of Famers that played in that era is one of the driving factors, obviously. And obviously, we'll have a stretch where no Hall of Famers are going to die because none of them got elected. So that'll also be whatever. Let's see, if you retire when you're 40 in 2004, to die when you're 2044. So that 2044 stretch, you can. I obviously won't be here to see it, but somebody will.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of the players we grew up with have hit their 70s and 80s now, you know, too. I mean,
yes.
Some of us grew up with them.
You know, it really seems like, you know, when you talk about Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, who are obviously his players, but I was literally just starting Little League when they so, I mean, 73, 74, 75, all of my baseball watching time, real volume, is from 8 or 9 to 20 when you go to college and do whatever. So it's really just, so I'm much more of a Mike Schmidt, Willie Stargell, that stretch of people. as much of Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. Well, Willie Mays is.
He's still alive. Don't put a hex on him.
I said hanging in there.
And Chris, you probably used to also watch the Say Hey Kid, the cartoon.
Yeah, yeah. That was a really long time ago.
A long time ago.
I grew up in New York in the 50s, so I saw Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Pretty good. Although,
I'm from Pittsburgh, so I'm a Clemente fan from that era.
Yeah, so he's also someone, but you know.
Well, I grew up in Chicago with Ernie Banks and Nellie Fox and Louis Aparicio. I'm 71, so I was born in 49. So the 50s was such a good period when you're like 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, the Go-Go Sox.
I think it's 10 deaths in the past year.
Yeah, starting last April or whatever.
Yeah, starting with Al Keon on April 6th.
That's what I was thinking.
It is to your point, sir. There's just a lot of players that baby boomers grew up with, and as America ages well, you know, that just happens. And I'm a little younger than the rest of you, probably at 41. So it's hitting me too, because you grow up watching baseball and you see Joe Morgan on ESPN and stuff like that, you know. So it hits you, yeah.
Yeah, my earliest baseball memory is still Mazeroski's home run in the '60 World Series, being from Pittsburgh. So.
My first game was 1950. The Cardinals visited Ebbets Field. Saw Stan Musial, Harry the Hat Walker. I remember that because of his anachronism or his idiosyncrasy. And Don Newcomb pitched. We were fortunate enough to sit behind home plate. I thought he was the biggest man I ever saw.
Harry Walker's two-tone bat.
I remember him as manager of the Pirates. That was my memory of Harry Walker.
Wow.
You know, Larry Doby went over there to with Don Newcomb to Japan, and Don Newcomb hit more home runs than Larry did over there.
I didn't know that.
I think it was 1957. Newcomb hit 357, hit 7 home runs, and was used as a pinch hitter. It was either 57 or 56. Yeah, he won the Cy Young in 50. I don't remember.
A ding. I don't have anybody waiting. Oh, Dan has texted me and said he's trying to get his webcam to work. I'll just tell him we don't have to see you.
Yeah, Newcomb won the 27 games in 1956.
Yeah, so it was 57 when he had the really good hitting year.
Yeah, he was a good hitter. I think he had 7 home runs one year.
Yep, 57.
Yeah.
I saw Newcomb lose to Johnny Antonelli in Jersey City, 1-0. Pitched a great game, but Antonelli was better. Mays hit the home run to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
My worst memory with the Cubs is when that fan in the left field interfered with the foul ball.
Martman? Really? Martman is the worst. I guess they weren't really that close any other times. Oh, no. There he is, Dan Szymborski. He's now being admitted.
Yeah, I was up in Boston in 1983 and saw Don Mattingly hit his first home run. That's the only game I see the Yankees won, but it was crazy.
Am I muted?
Near the end of the game, you know, they were.
I don't hear anything.
Yeah,
No, Dan, we can hear you.
Yes, Dan.
Yeah.
Do not have your video, though.
Yeah, I know. But anyway, they had old Red Sox fan in the top of the ninth where the Yankees hit
looks like it
4-1. And he said, "I bet $100 that the Red Sox going to win." And they all the Yankee fans came over there. Yankees won, and there was a big fight between the Yankee guys and the Red Sox fans, and the police finally came over there.
I think I need to reconnect. I don't. I will.
I don't think Dan can hear us, Chris.
Oh, I can hear me.
Okay,
hear but I can't hear you.
I texted him. So I said we can hear you muttering. So we'll see if we get that sorted here in a second.
Why don't I hear him?
I tried to mute him unsuccessfully.
No.
There, I muted him, and then he unmuted himself. How's everybody doing? Everyone but Dan. Good?
There goes Dan.
Dan's going to try to reconnect.
How many of you Pirate fans out there remember Dick Stewart? He was my favorite when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Dr. Strange
Dr.
Glove.
Strange Glove.
I was going to say. Yeah, it's one of the good nicknames. I'll say that.
I saw Clemente and Mazeroski and the whole bunch, but I still like Dick Stewart better.
I'm a Mets fan, so that must be similar to me saying, "Oh yeah, Seaver, yeah, those guys are great," but I'm much, much more of an Ed Kranepool guy.
Yeah.
I am not an Ed Kranepool guy.
That's like me and the Braves and Brad Kominsk. I remember him.
Oh yeah, he's one of those famed 4A players.
Yeah, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Don Clendenin carried on.
Maybe Dan will be here. Oh, he got a picture, even if he doesn't connect his sound.
Didn't they used to call Don Clendenin Clink because he had the same defensive skill as Dick Stewart? Kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think no one else is waiting, and so I figure Dan thinks he's made it. At least
I can hear you now, Chris.
Good, Dan.
Sorry, I migrated to a different computer, and for some reason I thought my microphone was the headset, and my headset was also a headset. I don't know. It was my incompetence. I don't know what's going on with my webcam. So you just get to see me frozen in time.
Well, it's one of those things. I imagine you don't do this all the. Oh yes, you probably have to do this all the time. So I figured you.
I don't do a lot. Well, no, I have a face for radio, so I don't do a lot of TV.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming. Dan's here. I want to make sure that depending on what his time schedule looks like, and we want to obviously hear about all of that. So I'm glad everybody made it. I'll keep letting people in as they keep showing up. For those of you that don't know who Dan is, Dan and I have been friends since about the mid 90s, 95, 96. We probably weren't friends the first 6 months when he was telling me I didn't know what I was talking about.
I think our first interaction was you calling me an asshole.
Well, that's possible.
Which I think was probably true too.
True for a lot of people. And ironically, Dan at the time was like 17. Right? 15,
yeah, well,
16,
I'm
17.
nicer now. I'm slightly nicer. I'm still an asshole, I think, but
it was really amazing interactions on the news groups back then. Many of the people that we follow on ESPN and stuff were really in rec sport baseball or the various team news groups, which are just message boards.
All thought sports. It was, it was very Twittery in a way, the way it was distributed.
Yes.
But you had more characters. And everyone was, I guess I'd say angrier, but no, Twitter's pretty angry, so I won't say that.
Yeah.
But it was mostly academic because news groups were, a shared server, and it was popular in academia. And I don't think you ever hit mass consumption the way first blogs and then social media did. And it pretty much shut down when they all became just porn and all the servers stopped carrying it.
And I mean, they migrated to Google Groups, so you can still sometimes find. You can go back and see the first interactions, but all the baseball prospectus people started there. Tom Tango, he really posted more at FanGraphs. But Rob Nair had message boards, and probably a bunch of you may have participated in that. So a lot of people that have evolved into this really came from those message boards. And you can go back and find people such as myself posting some really cliche things on the internet. Today, I would disavow. Oh, no, I would have never said that. Oh, you said it. It's like finding a tweet from, 2013. So it's pretty great.
But that's like one of the experiences of aging. You get to look back and cringe at yourself when you were young. I know when I remember when I was writing haiku about Ed Sprague. I've met Ed Sprague. I haven't mentioned this to him, but obviously. But you look back at some of the things you said and you think, oh, I was an idiot. But that's if you don't look back at what you said when you were 20 or 25 or whatever, and you don't think you're an idiot, you probably haven't grown.
Yeah.
See, that's my chestnut of wisdom.
You were much more like 50. Seriously, it's 25 years ago. You just turned 40.
Well, no, I'm 42 now.
42. So 25 years ago.
I can at least drive.
That's true.
I'm sorry, Dan. Could you give us an example of Ed Sprague haiku?
Oh, let me find one. Oh God, there was this person in the Pirates news group who was obsessed with Ed Sprague at third base, and he was convinced that Aramis Ramirez was a bust and would never be anything, and that the Pirates should play, Ed Sprague over him. So it became kind of childish. I'm trying to find Ed Sprague, Dan Szymborski. But it was childish, but you can talk while I try to find this.
Yeah. I'll tell y'all more about Dan while he looks that up. So Dan, this is at the time, it really started. A-Rod was about to come up, and in the Bill James books, they had a forecast of what Bill James had forecasted for A-Rod, and it was obviously third numbers. And I was like, well, these guys don't know, right? And some other people said, oh, he's an expert, and I said, well, he's not really an expert. It's just a formula. And so Dan said, I can make one that good. And he has. So he's been really successful. If you've seen it, he publishes Zips. He wrote at ESPN Insider for a very long time. He's always been savvy about making sure he didn't give away his intellectual property. So that's a very key aspect of Dan's success. And now he's a writer at FanGraphs. But everywhere utilizes his forecasting or projection system called Zips. There are others, Steamer, Pacoda, all of those, and all of those are things that Dan and I discussed 20 years ago. But Zips is one of the first ones where Dan started, because at the time people didn't know much about minor league equivalencies, and Dan had done that, so he had built a really great base for how all of his would work. So he's been really successful in that regards.
Well, you had something to do that. This was our idea to do it was collaborative more than you're taking on. We collaborated on the idea, even if I'm the one who eventually did it in the end.
Oh, he broke up. And you went in a tunnel.
Oh, sorry.
You have to try again. It went.
Sorry. It was more collaborative than you're suggesting. We kind of thought of the idea of doing it together. I mean, I eventually did it, but you did have a lot to do with it, which is why you're always quoted in the origin story.
I think it's you, Chris. We can hear Dan. Okay.
I can hear him.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can't hear me. Okay. Well,
it was me.
Chris, he just called you an asshole.
No, I didn't.
No.
Well, I might have, but not this time. Sorry. I'm trying to. There's a lot to search on Google Groups, so I'm like trying to find me being mean 20 years ago, which is weird.
So to that point, yeah. So he and I would go through iterations. how do you adjust for age? What about this? All the factors that we could think to put in there to refine how it works. But Dan has told me, like, he helps with arbitration. So teams will say, help me with some data. And at the same time, players will say, help me with some data. And so it's pretty entertaining that he gets to play both sides of that and help share it. Now, the really reason I want to get Dan on is because the season's getting close and we all have our fantasy baseball drafts coming up. So hopefully Dan will share. I did see, after I asked him to come on, he did write a piece about breakout players at FanGraphs. Hopefully I didn't read it. Hopefully none of y'all read it. And Dan can surprise us all with who he forecast to be breakout candidates, and of course, who's going to win the World Series. All right. So Dan, open with however you'd like to talk about yourself. Hopefully, an Ed Sprague haiku.
Yeah, I'm still trying. I posted a lot on Usenet. We will have to find it later and send it. I think. I'm disappointed. I should have saved those better.
Yeah, you saved some of them. Dusty Baker stuff.
Okay, well, anyway, I should probably actually talk about other stuff instead of trying to find this, because now I'm annoyed that I guess it's probably better that it's not easily found. But anyway, one thing I do is, I do a lot of projection work, but there's always some things I disagree with the projections. And one of the things about running projections and doing this kind of data is that you also get kind of familiar with the things that projections have issues with, because there's only so much you can do with data. There's only so many clever ways you can, say, integrate a player's injury or a new pitch at the end of the season. And I like to think I'm fairly clever, but there are limitations. So there are always some players that, that I have significant disagreements with the projections for some reason. So some of them, some data, some guts. I did a couple pieces on FanGraphs just the last week about them. And I think a good example of it is Ryan McMahon of the Rockies. He was a legitimately not a top prospect, but he was a solid one. And I think one thing that projections have a little trouble dealing with, or really anybody, is how to deal with a player who's been kind of used in a very awkward manner developmentally. In McMahon's case, he essentially had two wasted seasons as the Rockies brought him up, brought him down, sat him on the bench, used him as a pinch hitter. And even though I can't prove it, I think there's a chance, at least, that he's better than his playing record so far. So a player like that is interesting to me, because once you do all the projections, the most fun thing is trying to beat the projections and thwart the projections and try to bend them in a certain way. So that's kind of my approach to the thing. Projections are a good tool, but you don't have a tool for every tool doesn't work for every purpose.
Everything looks like a nail to me. So Dan, let's start. How do you see if everyone hasn't seen your standings and Zips projects every player? So how do you see each of the divisions working out?
Well, let's see. I guess the AL East. It's not surprising because everyone's still projecting the Yankees as the best, but there are significant downside scenarios. There's a lot to like about the rotation, but you look at some of the guys past Cole, and there are a lot of players with an injury history, or even, say, lack of experience in the major. Some players both, and that makes them just, you can't really project them as aggressively as last year. Zips tends to disagree a bit with the FanGraphs model here. It's an issue of methodology, essentially, because Zips attempts to try to calculate depth, while the FanGraphs looks mostly at the depth charts as currently constituted. So I think that the Yankees, 96 is what FanGraphs has. I'd probably take a win or two less than that just because of the downside risk. The Blue Jays have improved significantly. The Rays, they did lose Blake Snell. That is a step back, but they're very competitive. Red Sox, I kind of see around 500. The Orioles, unfortunately, I still don't think the team is there yet. They were briefly relevant last season, during the shortened season for like the first month of the season, but it's not a team that has a great, the pitching rotation is not there yet. They're still trying to assemble a lineup. They're missing a lot of key, up the middle skilled players. It's not going to be a good team. The Central, I mean, I have the White Sox and the Twins is pretty close. The Indians dropping off significantly. They've given away too many pictures in recent years. You can't lose Lindor and not suffer. The West, it's fairly open. The Astros are nowhere near as strong as they have been in recent years. I mean, even ignoring all the trash can stuff. I mean, they're not having Justin Verlander back this year. They just lost Framber Valdez, so he's not around. They don't have great pitching depth just at all. Angels and A's are probably better than the Angels. Mariners and Rangers are probably going to be just absolutely terrible. The pitching staff might be respectable, but the offense is probably the worst in baseball. NL East, I have Mets, Braves pretty close. Nats a little behind. Just the Phillies above 500, but I think one of the misnomers that people have about their offseason is that they can improve by adding Real Muto, but you can't really improve by adding him because you already had him. You're just preventing yourself from getting worse. It's a team I wish had been more aggressive because largely they've assembled. I mean, not completely. I mean, I guess Matt Moore is something. I'm not going to say anything mean, but I think it's too close to the team last year, which did have some poor luck, but I'm a little disappointed with their offseason. I think the Marlins, the offense still has a lot of holes, and the Central is like the Cardinals, then in a bunch of mediocrity. It's kind of a boring division in a way. I mean, it should be close and exciting, but in a boring way. If that makes sense. I don't know. Well,
we'll let you get through all the divisions, then we'll ask about our favorites.
Okay. NL West, I mean, it looks pretty clear like it's going to be a Dodgers-Padres battle. I mean, the Dodgers probably pulled a couple games ahead with the Bauer signing. And Giants and Diamondbacks, they'll probably be, around 500 or a bit below. And the Rockies are going to fight with the Pirates, I think, and the Rangers to be the worst team in baseball. It's a lousy team. And that's pretty much my projection roundup.
So I don't want to ask all the questions, but I'll go first. The Cubs. So they kept, Bryant, even though I assumed they would go full Arenado on that. So where in the wins? Do they make 500? Are they going to be above it? What does that look like?
I think they can make 500, but I mean, look at their rotation. It's just not super exciting because I mean, they gave away Darvish. I did not like that trade at all. And I mean, at the end, I mean, you have Jake Arrieta, who hasn't really been a contributor in years. Trevor Williams, who, I mean, people like him, but I mean, he was non-tendered deservingly last year. Alec Mills, and then after that, I mean, Shelby Miller is on their depth chart. When Shelby Miller is on your depth chart somewhere in 2021, that's not a good sign.
All right, who's got a question? Who wants to ask about a particular team? Anyone? Surely the Cardinals fans, you're just satisfied with we're going to win. Okay. We're going to win, so I'm satisfied.
Okay. I'm a Cardinals fan, Dan. What do you think Arenado is going to do in St. Louis?
I think he's going to be fine. I think there is some risk. His shoulder is believed to be okay, and it probably is okay, but it still has to be in the back of your head that, hey, he did have shoulder problems last year. And I do think that, I mean, it's a significant addition. It was nice to see a team finally step up because, I mean, I was disappointed when they just let Colton Wong walk essentially for what was it, $2 million buyouts? There was like a 1 year, $10 million decision. It felt very cynical. And, for most of the offseason, the best free agent signed by an NL Central team was Daniel Robertson by the Brewers. So I've had a lot of complaints about the NL Central, but the Cardinals should be fine, but I don't think they're like a 92 win team or anything. I think they're, mid to high 80s. Things can go wrong. I was joking when I did a projection rundown for them back in December that really no matter whatever the Cardinals do and whatever you project, they're probably going to win between 85 and 91 games every year because that's just what they always do.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the pitching. Michaelis is coming back from an injury. Carlos Martinez really has stunk it up the last couple of years. Flaherty wasn't as good last year as he was year before.
Yeah, there's definitely some downside risk there because, I mean, they got a lot more than they probably could have expected from Adam Wainwright last season. It's fun to have him back, but there are questions. Michaelis, as you said, was injured. Carlos Martinez hasn't had a full season as a starter and healthy. And what was it, 2017, 2016? All the years kind of have run together during COVID for me. I think it was 2017. Yeah. So there is downside risk there. I do think that they're more solid than the rest of the division. Chris, you're a Cards hater, aren't you?
No, Chris is a Mets fan.
No, but he said I'm a Cards hater.
Hater.
Oh yeah, I know you're a Mets fan with his.
Oh, I'm a tremendous Cards hater. I can't.
Yeah. So
sorry, y'all.
I was hoping
know we have a lot of Cardinals fans in our area for some reason.
I'm just trying to turn them against you.
Dan, I'm a Mets fan like Chris. I mean, you said that they were going to be battling it with the Braves. How would who do you think's got the edge with what the Mets have done over, the winter?
I actually think the Mets have a slight edge because one of the difference between this Mets team and some other teams is they really have some depth in some places. Because one of the things about the Mets is in recent years, the rotation looks good at the start of the season. Mm-hmm. If you assume that's the rotation they're going to have. Right. Because then there would be like that big drop off to their sixth starter. And it always felt like, people always go in the spring and say, on paper, this is a great team, but you never really get the team you want on paper because especially with pitchers, they are going to get injured. And when you don't have adequate plan Bs, things can fall apart pretty quickly. But this rotation, you have DeGrom, Carrasco, Stroman, Walker at the top, Peterson, Thor coming back. You have Lucchesi, you have Yamamoto. And in that context, I don't mind Seth Lugo being the ninth option in the rotation. My concern was that they would go into the season with him as the fifth option, which just puts a whole kind of gambling into it because he doesn't have a great record as a starting pitcher. He's been much more effective in relief. If that doesn't work, then the dominoes start to fall apart. And so I think the team's possibly a little deeper than the Braves right now in some respects.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
Who else we got? Who else got a team they want to hear about? I enjoyed hearing them.
San Francisco Giants. I am just confused by the number of players they got running around in spring training, especially the number of pitches. What do you think is going to emerge? How do you think they're going to emerge in terms of the starting staff, relievers, and just the whole team in general?
I think the lineup's just going to be okay. I don't think it's going to be enough to be, really. It's a very tough division because of the top of the division. I'm intrigued by the starting pitching. I think I did a piece on them because they have some really interesting arms there. I loved when they picked up Kevin Gausman last year. I love that they got him back for the qualifying offer. He's always been one of my favorites. I still think I've been on this for a while. I really think he still needs to have an effective breaking pitch. He's pretty much, his heavy fastball, his splitter thingamabob. It's a very Fosh type pitch for those who don't watch a lot of Gausman. It's very Mike Boddicker-y. I guess I'm revealing, my Baltimore background and my age since that's what I go to. I like Gausman, so I would like to see him in a full season because he was very effective last season. Johnny Cueto, I don't really think Johnny Cueto's coming back like the picture he was, but it's interesting as long as you have him. And it's always better to be interesting than to not be because you still have upside. The Rockies aren't going to be interesting. The Giants might be. You look, Logan Webb, Alex Wood, Anthony DeSclafani coming back. He's had some injury issues of his own. I think the pitching staff could be pretty respectable. I just don't think they really have, I don't think they have the offensive depth in the outfield. I know Evan Longoria is getting up there. Posey, Bell, Crawford, they're all kind of on the back ends of their career. It's a team, like the last couple of years, they could finish around 500, but if you're not having 16 teams in the playoff, that's not a great place to be.
Yeah, that's probably the worst thing. And, it's when you have the Dodgers and the Padres, you're in trouble for 25 games right out of the gate. If I have
Yeah.
18, it's 18, right? 36 games, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, there's no way around it. I think I'd have to double check all of them. I think I actually have, if you ranked all the divisions just by the top two teams, I think the Dodgers and Padres will have the highest combined projection for any two teams in the years I've been doing this. And I've been doing team standings since 2004. So it's a tough position. And I think that any team in the NLS has to kind of consider that competitive position, that realistically you're probably playing for the second wild card unless something goes horribly wrong for the Dodgers or the Padres. And even then, if something goes wrong for one of them, the other one will probably win the division by 15 games or something. It's a tough division to be in, even though it's fun to watch the race at the top of it.
So I have one question that almost everybody is a National League fan, so that's really sets it on its ear. Those of us in the greater Durham area, we always pull for the Rays because all of those players we got to watch while they were playing here. So that's fun. But the thing that I think is going to be interesting that is in the AL West, because that division is terrible. And the Angels got Ohtani back, who has so far, yes, it's just a couple of spring training anecdotes, has just been monstrous. Trout, I mean, that team has two of the best players. How easy in the error bars in the whisker box, how close can the Angels really get?
Well, the thing is, I don't think either the Astros or A's on average are a 90-win team. And that makes things attainable for the Angels because, I mean, they start off with Mike Trout. And that's what makes their lack of playoffs so embarrassing because, their challenge in recent years has been to build an 80-win team around Mike Trout. And they can't even do that. And that's an extremely frustrating thing. I mean, you start off with Trout, with Rendon, and if Ohtani's healthy, you're literally talking like 17 or something WAR to start with. And you had that to start with, and you don't build a team around that. It's been frustrating. I mean, I loved watching Albert Pujols in his prime, but it's just become increasingly sad. I think he has, I did it. In terms of below replacement level, he has by far the most below replacement at bats at the end of his career of any future Hall of Famer. It was double over the next guy. I think it was Keeler. I'm trying to pull this up really quickly.
You're doing something impressive when you're dipping back into the late 1800s for a comp.
Yeah, I did a chart
the
of
next closest guy played 120 years ago.
I did replacement level Hall of Famers age 35 and on. And there were 14 players who were, below replacement level offensively after age 35. Most of them didn't play very much. It was 3 plate appearances for Ray Schalk and 9 for Jennings. Albert Pujols has had 3,000 plate appearances since 35. Next is that were below replacement level. Willie Keeler is at 1288, Jim Bomley at 1146. I mean, we've seen more of a decline from Pujols than any person we were going to see in the Hall of Fame. And so it always feels kind of depressing. You see Trout hit and then Pujols comes up and you remember how awesome Pujols was in St. Louis and how not awesome he's been since. It stinks as a baseball fan because so many people who have gotten into baseball in the last decade will have seen Pujols play. When he enters the Hall of Fame, their only memory of Pujols will be, declining Pujols that just wasn't very good. And that's sad in a way.
Oh, he's not good.
He's not good.
It's definitely a cautionary tale for a 10-year contract when somebody turns 31 or 32. My favorite part is this. Joe DiMaggio, obviously it was completely different, and Joe DiMaggio may have hung on if he had another 7 years on his contract. But, he famously was I don't want to show up and play first base. Somebody's out there and I don't want to see them not me not at my best. But for Pujols, it's much more. But if I show up, I get all the money. Yeah.
But the Angels were happy to do it too. They were happy to do it too. They had all the milestone things, and it was so depressing. Even like the milestones were depressing because it's just been kind of this sad trudge to records. Like he's beaten Mays.
Oh God.
Oh, but he's hitting like he is.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
How would you? Of course, it's not as dramatic a decline, but again, it involves a long-term contract. I was going to ask about your opinion of the Tigers rebuild, but also Miguel Cabrera is in that category where he has a long contract that could be looked upon as a burden for the Tigers.
Well, I mean, it's probably not a burden while they're rebuilding. Simply because, I mean, the team, it's not a big payroll team now, but I mean, the contract was going to be a problem, but there was kind of a very, very specific reason that he was signed. Because, you know, Mike Ilitch was up there in years, and he was going to have, you know, an opinion about trying to win a World Series right then that, say, like a younger owner would not have had. And so I think there was kind of a feeling of like après moi le déluge, the old French saying from Louis XV, that what happened right then is what mattered, and what was keeping Miguel Cabrera was what mattered. But yeah, that contract was never going to end well. He was already having, you know, some back issues before they even signed it. And, you know, it committed that cardinal sin of an extension that doesn't start for a couple years, which means you're just adding on the risk. Like the Phillies did with Howard. They didn't just extend him. They extended him years in advance of when he had to be extended. And so you just bring in another 2 years of aging, another 2 years of risk. It's actually ended up a little worse than I expected. And I wasn't really expecting it to end well. But he's probably not actively hindering anything but the Tigers' bottom line. So I'm not going to weep too much about the Ilitch family finances. I think they're going to do just fine either way. The rebuilding's been going, I guess, mixed reactions. I think it's gone better lately. I like their young pitching. I mean, they have Torkelson now, but they really haven't, until this, they haven't really developed a lot of young hitting. And that's kind of been a concern, because that's kind of been, you know, probably the team's biggest weakness now. That the pitching, the rotation could be actually pretty respectable very quickly.
Hey Dan, you were doing comps earlier. I don't think I've ever been less excited about a Red Sox season ever in my life. Can you comp for me Friedman and Bloom? I don't understand, you know, how the Red Sox have become what they've become, whereas Friedman went to the Dodgers and spent.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a tough situation, because the way they handled the whole Mookie Betts thing was just so distasteful in a way. And part of it is because, you know, baseball's financial system kind of builds in these perverse incentives. And I think that's kind of the problem. The way the luxury tax is structured, it incentivized the Red Sox essentially to act as they did, and so they did. And I mean, the Red Sox could be okay, but it's just not exciting. And I think, you know, the Red Sox have won enough World Series in the last, you know, 20 years that you want to see a little more. It's hard to get excited about, you know, and maybe we win 85 games. I mean, Xander Bogaerts is terrific, but it's just not an exciting team that you really want to watch that much of. I guess, who was it that Bill James said was like bad jazz? Was that the Astros or the Padres?
I don't know. Like jazz is still jazz.
Yeah, it was one of the abstracts. I guess I could ask him on Twitter.
I'm jamming somebody up in the waiting room,
since he doesn't actually block me, like, because a lot of analysts try to troll Bill. We used to you remember John Mosey?
Yes.
We used to crank instant message Bill James in the 90s, because he actually used AOL Instant Messenger.
Yes, he did.
I mean, nothing mean or anything, just purposefully silly things like, is your refrigerator running, the old gags.
Yeah.
He never really responded, but I don't think he remembered that.
He responded to me one time obviously he didn't know me from Adam, but if you're not that old or you didn't involve AOL, but AOL IM, you would respond to it sometime, because it was during the forecasting and I was trying to do my own, but really trying to talk about how bad Manny Ramirez was in left field. And I asked him, how much, how bad is Manny and do you account for the wall? He said, Manny is so bad on the road, I don't even bother. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
They probably made Voros deal with that question. Anyway.
Yes, it was pretty entertaining. Voros would probably have to deal with it. Anything else? But I'm going to ask about breakouts other than Ryan McMahon and anybody that is a surprise, Dan, before I go read your article over at FanGraphs.
Well, sometimes when I write articles, I surprise myself by talking myself into something I didn't expect. Like, I did not expect when I was writing an article that I would pick, a reliever, Ryan Tepera, who signed a 1-year, $800,000 contract after being non-tendered. I didn't expect I would pick him, but then I was looking at his record and I was looking at his data from his cutter. He had the third best contact hit rate against for any pitcher with 20 innings in 2020. And I kind of talked myself into like, maybe he is interesting, because sometimes you approach an argument and you suspect what it's going to be, and then a lot of times you do that. It's fun because some of the work I've done, it kind of gives you an ability to play devil's advocate, because one reason I take data consulting things from a wide variety of teams and agents is I charge the same thing for everyone. I don't refuse anything because I had to be very careful because there's some conflict of interest issues. So I can never give an advisory opinion. I can only present data that is asked for. So sometimes I was asking for something. I can't say the player's name due to confidentiality, but it was someone who was an agent for someone who was talking with the Rockies, and they wanted data for a scenario that I thought was preposterous that the Rockies wouldn't buy, but it got me thinking about it just in a different way, because they wanted that data for just this particular slant and argument for the player. So I find this kind of, besides, of course, the consulting fees pay well, it does kind of, make me more well-rounded as an analyst to be able to look at things like that. So,
that's so. What about awards? How much do you, or do you just go, well, this person projects the best, or do you actually try to?
I actually have a neural network for. I do use machine learning, unsupervised learning for awards. These are things I do for fun. Because you can predict to some level how writers are going to vote. My favorite is the Manager of the Year award, because you would think that the Manager of the Year award would be the hardest thing to model, because there's the least stats for managers. It's mostly observation. But one of the things I've discovered, that Manager of the Year awards are the easiest awards to predict in a model, because it's really just how good the team is, how good they are relative to the projections, and how many wins they added from last year. That model explains almost the entirety of Manager of the Year awards, which makes me think that the writers are doing a pretty crappy job with that. If that's, you're just voting for the surprise team, guys. That's all. You're not evaluating the manager at all.
Yeah.
So
they should use Jaffe's stuff.
Yeah, Jaffe would do a better. They should just give him the Manager of the Year award. The one thing that makes me sad about awards is because I am in the Baseball Writers Association in Cincinnati chapter, so I vote for NL awards. So I can't gamble on NL awards anymore because I love to do those prop bets. I did so well with because I would do just a little fun prop bet piece for ESPN every year before the start of spring training, and I would, I'd put $200 on for each of the bets that I picked, and I loved. I mean, I hit Max Scherzer at 22-1, I believe, to win the AL Cy Young that year he broke out. I hit Christian Yelich that year. So because he was on my breakouts list that year, so I wanted to go with it. So I can't do that anymore ethically because weird.
Are these your bets, Dan, or bets for Pete Rose?
Well, he's Cincinnati.
Yeah, you said Cincinnati.
Well, I don't have my bookie living with me like Pete did.
So who's going to win the Cy Youngs? Is it as simple as Jacob deGrom and Garrett Cole?
Now, funny story. I mean, at this point, I do a lot of projections, and I've done these for a long time. That at the top end, I don't usually get surprised that often. But in the AL, the picture that projected with the best WAR wasn't Cole. It was Lucas Giolito. So I'm probably going to go with him just because it feels like a betrayal of the projection system if I don't. And it's fun to not pick Cole. Part of the reason was, Giolito's upside is still kind of unknown while Cole's more established at this point. Zips uses a lot of StatCast data these days, and actually thought from some of the play discipline type of data that he actually underperformed where his strikeout rate could have been based on some of his peripherals, and that's why Zips loves him so much. But I was genuinely surprised. I wouldn't have sworn on my life because that would kind of be stupid. But I expected it to be Cole and deGrom at the top in each league, and so it is deGrom in the NL, but Cole was number 2.
And for MVPs, are you just stuck with Mike Trout and Mookie Betts?
I don't know. I think the NL is more interesting because you have Betts, but you have Acuna, you have Juan Soto. There's a lot of interest there that can happen. I haven't made my official. I guess we don't do our FanGraphs staff picks until right before the start of the season. Trout's still a safe bet in the AL. I'm not going to change from Trout until I'm proved otherwise. I did a fun piece, I guess last year it was. COVID has kind of messed up my conception of time. I actually could have sworn at one point that the Nationals were the World Series champions in 2018 because it seemed so long before that. And I was trying to think who won the World Series in 2019. I'm like, oh wait, it was the Nationals. Because it was a year and a half ago that the Nationals won the World Series. How many years ago does that seem now? It's like it's 5 years ago. But anyway, I wrote about the demise of Mike Trout, essentially. I think I call it the inevitable decline of Mike Trout because, I like to, part of being a writer is trolling people, essentially. Writers don't want to admit it because to a journalist, it's all kind of a noble profession that puts you just right below sainthood. But a lot of writing is trolling, essentially. You're writing things that people don't want to hear. So, I had fun and I got to title it. And so what I did is I projected the projections, like who would be projected to be the best player in the league every year in the future. And like when it would take over, like before 2020 or during 2020, Trout was projected to have a 60% chance of having the best projection in 2021. Projecting projections is a very meta thing, so that amused me as well. But that went down every year, and by 2024, Acuna would have the best projected projection in baseball over Trout. He was favored to have the best projection by the time they got to that point. But I think it's Trout for now until we see significant decline. I mean, he has had some injury issues that have kept him from, being the clear-cut MVP, which is different than, the first 5 years in his career, where he pretty much should have been the MVP every single season. Although we've had a lot of Trout Cabrera arguments that I hope we don't have to revisit again.
Yes. All right. All right. Who else has questions for Dan? Dan, is there anything else you want to specifically talk about? I saw that Ryan found your haikus in the tweet.
Yay!
Yeah, I found them on Twitter too.
So apparently Twitter was easier than Google Groups. And so I sent them to you in the Twitter message.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Good.
Just so we have the right read, it's like having Allen Ginsberg read one of his poems too.
Yeah, I feel they were mean, but they weren't like direct insults. Like bird flies, because haiku have to be nature related. So I tried to be nature related where possible. Let's see. Bird flies through the sky. Sprague encloses his glove's net. Bird eludes his grasp. Mighty hands of stone. What great goals do they attain? Better left unsaid. Just things like that. Very passive aggressive sarcasm.
So was the Sprague, was this post Blue Jays?
Yeah. This was at the end of his career. Oh. This was at the point where no one believed Ed Sprague should be a starter. I mean, he literally retired like the year after like these haiku. And it was just kind of obnoxious because this guy in the Pirates news group just hated Aramis Ramirez. Yeah, this was 1999. This was actually Sprague's last year as a starter in the majors. He became a part-timer and traded the year after that and was, out of baseball a year later. And so he would keep bashing Aramis in like pretty crude language. So I just write him haiku about Ed Sprague to mess with the guy. In hindsight, it's not the nicest thing to do.
Yes, probably not.
But I never expected to be respectable. So
if anyone wonders, you can add the link. You can go read I think there's 4 or 5 of them in there. Dan, anything else you want to throw out, or does anybody have any questions for Dan?
Yeah,
obviously, Howard's going to give us some trivia questions, and then Keith is going to talk about some other stuff, and we're just going to riff some baseball for a while.
All right, Chris, I have
a question for Dan.
One short question for
I have a
Dan. How do you see the Rays handling their pitching this season over a longer year than last year?
It's kind of tricky for the Rays because they were able to kind of, patch together a rotation from, essentially 3 starters in a short season. I think in some way you're going to see some of the pitchers used a little more traditionally. I think you're going to see, if he's healthy, I think you'll see Chris Archer throw, 140, 150 innings. I know that doesn't sound very traditional, but it is for the Rays to have like a lot of guys a lot of 4-inning specials. But I mean, the guys they have aren't really the same situational types, because Blake Snell was terrific, but he was also a guy who didn't really have a lot of experience going deep into games. I think if Rich Hill is healthy, they'll just keep throwing him out there. I think this could probably be the most normal looking season for the Rays rotation in terms of usage. I don't think it's quite as designed to be like, have the opener as it was. I think, you'll start to see Josh Fleming, I think, take some innings away from either Waka or Hill or whoever underperforms. I think you might see Ryan Yarbrough used fairly traditionally this year. Although with the Rays, you could be wrong and they have some sort of new crazy plan.
I have a question.
Mid-season for Wander Franco?
I hope so. I really want to see him. I was disappointed we didn't get him in 2020. That would have been fun, but service time clock and all that, and the Rays weren't going to start anything. But yeah, he's the best prospect in baseball since Trout. Maybe better than Trout at the same time. Because Trout turned out to be Trout, but did we think of Trout as much then as we think of Wander now? I'm not really sure we do. I don't know. It's hard to remember exactly what you remember sometimes.
Keith,
Yeah. I had a question on the Yankees and Gary Sanchez.
Sanchez.
And I was wondering what you were thinking.
Sanchez is a really tough call because he's one of these players. He has had such a freaky low batting average on balls in play. Now there's more variability from hitter to hitter with this stat than with, say, pitchers, but he's been so poor at it. He was like at 160 last year, which is absolutely absurd because there's kind of a natural floor there because pitchers hitting have a batting average on balls in play, usually between 215 and 235, depending on the year. And I just can't buy that Gary Sanchez's hits are easier to feel than that of a pitcher. Like Randy Johnson had like a 220 batting average on balls in play. And my editor would not let me use the line, but I said that in this context that Randy Johnson, I mean, he stood up there at the plate like Lurch with hemorrhoids. That's how Randy Johnson was at the plate. Tell me I'm wrong, anyone. That's what he looked up there. He looked like, I mean, he had no idea, like they just told him which end of the bat to hold like 5 seconds before he went to the plate. And you can't tell me that Gary Sanchez is easier to field his hits than Randy Johnson's.
Oh man,
Randy Johnson did not leg out infield hits either. He was not, like Marlins era Luis Castillo.
I know.
Do you think the Yankees then would make a trade for a catcher then midseason? Just because then, like, if one of the other teams in division gets close, or the Yankees are tied in August, and they say, we can't go with 8 guys at the plate every time. We need a new hitter. We need a new catcher. You see them doing that? Yeah,
they've showed a lot of faith in Sanchez. I think a lot of people were kind of expecting to trade him over this winter, but that didn't happen, obviously. But I do think that if push comes to shove and he's still struggling, and they actually feel the heat from the Jays or the Rays or who knows, the Red Sox, I do think that in that situation, I think they would be willing to move on from him. I think that change of scenery can be overrated sometimes from people that use it too easily, but Sanchez strikes me as a guy who might thrive with a different organization at this point. Not because the Yankees have mistreated him, but you have so much baggage, people accusing him of being a slacker because he didn't play through an injury a few years ago. He's probably the closest to a disliked player on the team now as a player, I think.
He sort of reminds me of kind of the Bobby Mercer syndrome, where he was supposed to be the next Mickey Mantle, and he wasn't, and he never could be. And Sanchez following right after Posada, everyone said, "Oh, he's going to be just as good," and he's not. And I think he needs a change of scenery.
Dan, I want to say that Vince Gennaro, he is big on Sanchez having a bounce back season, right? This was a couple years ago, but he always has got to, because to Dan's point, no one can have it this poorly on balls in play.
Yeah,
challenge accepted.
Yeah, it's difficult when it's like it's counterintuitive that it's happening, but it's also happening, and that makes it a very frustrating situation for everyone. But you could definitely see a player going up against expectations like that. This is probably one that Chris probably doesn't remember, but Greg Jeffries, he turned out to be an okay player in the end, but the problem that he always had is that he was always compared to the guy who hit at Tidewater. So he was always going to disappoint if he wasn't a superstar. And when people thought, when he became just, an average player, a lot of people didn't accept that and thought he was the worst player in the world. It's like, no, he's just average. It's not the end of the world. He's not what we hoped, but he's an actual player. He's not, Tim Tebow.
Well, those 60 games in the end of '88 were pretty. So hitting 353. He just raked.
Yeah, it was a nice cup of coffee.
Yes.
And
greatest coffee. It was the world's greatest coffee.
What was it? Tidewater? He had that huge
Wrong
line
cup of
for?
coffee.
No. Was it Tidewater? No.
Yeah, it was Tidewater.
No, it was Jackson. Tidewater, he kind of stunk at. Okay, sorry. I just pulled it up real quickly. I was just working from memory.
Just out of curiosity, when you say you pulled it up real quickly, do you go to Baseball Reference?
For minor league stuff, absolutely.
Just wondering.
Yeah, FanGraphs minor league stuff only goes back to 2002.
When you talk about change of scenery as a Cubs fan, one of the players I'm excited to see is Jack Peterson playing every day. I think he could be really, really impressive. What are your thoughts about him and how he might relate to Kyle Schwarber's production in Washington?
I like Peterson a lot. I think he's one of those guys who's been probably overcast as a platoon only guy. He was actually one of my bounce back guys for 2019 or 2018. I forget which year he had the really poor one. Was that 2017 now? But anyway, I think it was a good pickup by the Cubs. I actually like Schwarber a lot also. I think that Schwarber still has kind of that huge power season in him that we haven't seen yet. But Peterson was a good pickup. And I think, the price was right because you didn't need to have a 5-year commitment to bring in Peterson.
Would you rather have kept Schwarber or picked up Peterson?
I think in the Cubs situation, I actually slightly prefer Peterson just because he can theoretically play some center field. He's not a great center fielder, but the way the roster is for the Cubs right now, it's useful to have a guy who can be in center because they don't have a lot of depth there. They have guys who can play center. Ian Happ has been way better than expected out there. Jason Hayward, but it's good to have another guy that can do that. And in Schwarber's case, I mean, he improved a lot in left, but I don't think you'd want to ever play Kyle Schwarber in center field.
No, I'm going to have nightmares tonight just thinking about it.
I don't know. The Cubs offense could be really good this year. I mean, you had a lot of underperformance really for all their name players. I mean, Bryant, Rizzo, Baez, they all just were real underperformers last year.
Do you think that the lack of video throughout Major League Baseball led to the dearth of offense throughout the league?
I think it affected individual players more because different guys had like their different just regimens where they do things. Like one player who it might have hurt a lot was JD Martinez, who was a noted video fiend. But some guys who don't do that kind of thing, it might not have hurt him as much as others. But really 2020 was so weird on so many levels that it just feels awkward almost to we have so many things that were just factors and made the year just so bizarre that I know Zips will naturally, definitely does place a much lower weight on 2020 because that was a problem that I would have of projections. And anyone who does projections is how do you weight the oddest season in baseball history? Teams aren't even playing each other widely. You have, essentially the divisions are league based all of a sudden, but it was the backdrop of the pandemic. It was a mess of a year, which makes a lot of weird things possible. Like just how players reacted, like just recovering from COVID. Like we have guys who struggled immensely after their COVID diagnoses. Like Yohan Moncada talked a lot about just being exhausted, like in the middle of games. But Freddie Freeman, who was symptomatic, it doesn't seem to have bothered him at all. So 2020 was just a mess, and I'm hoping we have a normal 2021 for so many reasons.
So Dan, that was going to be my question to you: is what did you do with 2020 in your projection system? How do you deal with it with all of the backdrop you just gave?
Well, the unsatisfying answer I usually give, which if I had a PR person, they would hate it, but I don't, so they don't, is I'd say poorly, because projections deal with, empirical looks at baseball history, how things happen in baseball history, because all we know about baseball is what has happened in baseball. There's no experimental data for baseball. You can't put players on the field and have them run a million years of baseball and see what pans out. The Players Association would not like that at all. It would be a big thing. But the way I went to deal with it, because I went back and I looked at projecting players after 1981 and 1994. And the approach I found that worked the best then was to pretend that those seasons stopped at that point, project them for the rest of the season, which of course would contain 1981 and 1980 and 1979, and then run the projection from there, like have a rest of season projection and then kind of move forward from there.
Because obviously we know there's plenty of examples of, 50 games in, a team is under 500 and then wins the World Series, or,
yeah. So
I'm 180 and, ends up at 300.
So yeah, I'm like pretending that I'm projecting that we're still in mid-season 2020 and I'm doing the projections for next year. We'll see how that approach works. It's one of those things that's gonna be fascinating, but it'd be nice to know the right answer ahead of time.
What's the ceiling for Ian Anderson?
Oh, he's a fun pitcher. I don't think he's going to be, like a Cy Young candidate, but I think he's going to be, a borderline ace for a long time, kind of one of those back end aces, high end number 2 guys. Maybe I'm being too mean, but I do like Anderson a lot. And he's a guy. He had pretty good projections, I think. I know it's easy to say now that he actually had that nice debut. Yeah, he had solid projections. I should pull him up and see where he ranks long term in Zips, just because I have it open now. Let's see. Sort by WAR. Let's see. In rest of career WAR, just for Zips. Zips has him 16th in baseball right now for rest of career WAR from this point. So he certainly projects to be quite solid. Maybe I'm even underselling him with my description, but there's a lot to like about him.
Yeah. I don't want to get into another technical conversation about that because I would.
Let's praise the Braves for more for Chris's benefit.
No, that's I don't know how the Braves did it. Their pitching doesn't look that good to me.
Who should be their center fielder?
Huh?
Pardon?
I was asking for the Braves. Who should be their center fielder?
Personally, I would put Acuna out there and see what happens, just because I think your best player, I think you want to challenge them as much as possible. That's just how I feel about it. And, I don't like, they do have other options there, but I don't like limiting a guy at the start of his career when there's something he can do and you're not using it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you're always supposed to play the most difficult defensive position you can handle. Well, obviously you handle it. I always thought that the Indians I think it was the Indians made a tremendous error moving Jim Thome off third.
Yeah, I think you try your talented players. You give them every chance to prove they can do something before you decide that they can't. I personally would have liked to see, the Dodgers keep Adrian Beltre at short as much as possible, because he was such a good third baseman. He came up, as a shortstop. I don't like limiting a player early. I thought that the Orioles, moving Machado because of JJ Hardy was just crazy. JJ Hardy was a terrific defensive shortstop, but you have to see what Manny Machado can do for you. And at this point, his last stint of shortstop wasn't great, but I think early in his career, he probably should have been at the position, and maybe he would have been a better shortstop at this point now, if he had stayed there like for years and had the experience. Because it's not just physical, because Cal Ripken wasn't exactly that athletic, and he was a terrific shortstop. So I do think you just want to challenge your best players.
Excellent. And I I'm not telling you to go. I just don't want to. Because I literally, like I said, we could literally go around. You have so much knowledge, and it's excellent. So who's going to win the World Series?
The boring answer is going to be the Dodgers because I still think they're the best team. And at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the best team to win the World Series. Now, if you gave me like Vegas odds and said who would beat the odds, then that's more fun. But the fun answer is the Padres. That's the more fun answer. But I'm probably going to pick the Dodgers, and that it's boring.
How close would you say those two teams are?
I'd probably put them at 2 or 3 games. One of the things the Padres have done that I think that people don't always get isn't just the top line names, is they've done the same thing that the Dodgers have in assembling depth. Because the Dodgers, one of their strengths has been they've had the guys like Chris Taylor, Kike Hernandez, Austin Barnes to a lesser extent, all the various swing pictures that they've had, the Stripling and Maeda and all them, is they had a significant amount of depth so that when bad things happened, they could recover from that. Like when they lost Seager for the season very early back, whatever year that was at this point, they kind of moved on without losing a beat in essence. And the Padres have that. I mean, if Kim doesn't work out, they still have Cronenworth. They still have Profar. They have a lot of depth. They have Mackenzie Gore really probably isn't in the rotation right now. They can't go back to Gore. They have Morejon. They have options. And I think that's what makes the Padres competitive with the Dodgers, not just the top end names, which of course is very good because the left side of that infield is terrific. I mean, you have Tatis and Machado, but they also can survive losing one of those guys for the year. I mean, you obviously don't want that to happen, but the team literally has options. I mean, say the worst happens and Tatis goes down for the year. At second, short, and third, you now have Cronenworth, Kim, and Machado. That's still a pretty good left side of your infield. That's just why I think the Padres are interesting. It's the same with their bullpen. Their bullpen is very, very deep.
Well, as long as nobody gets Homer happy. That's a Mets pain from Edwin Diaz. Just crazy. Terrible.
One thing I love is that since his contract, Tatis's bat flips have been even better in the spring.
Yeah, I never understand why that bothers people.
You see, I love that it bothers people. That gives it extra joy for me. When who was it? It was John Wayner who was broadcasting the Pirates-Reds game, and I think it was Derek Dietrich that hit a home run and was celebrating, and John Wayner's like, his grandfather is rolling over in his grave at seeing that. And it's like, no, he isn't. That is so stupid.
His grandfather.
Yeah, his grandfather. Yeah. I remember my grandfather, if I were a major league player and I hit a home run and bat flipped, he'd be pretty cool with that. He'd be like, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
All right. Anything else for Dan? Obviously, we could go on forever. I just want to be sure I don't eat off this all afternoon.
I had one question. What is the average league average for balls hit in play, and what is it for ground balls versus fly ball?
The average for batting average on balls in play, it tends to be between like 295 and 300 depending on the year. It's actually surprisingly stable from year to year. Ground balls have a significantly higher BABIP. What is it offhand? What is it, like 370 or 400 or something? A lot of ground ball hitters do have high BABIP. Maybe I'm just talking out of my butt right now. I just don't have the exact number in front of me, and I always hate to quote it when I don't have the exact number. But ground ball and BABIP is pretty high, and it's even higher for line drives. It's like what, 600 or something absurd. So one of the things that Zips does is it does try to model BABIP. So you do expect, guys who hit a lot of grounders and line drives to have, a higher batting average and balls in play. And of course, that's why Willie Mays Hayes was supposed to hit it on the ground.
So does Gary Sanchez have a higher percentage of fly balls compared to the average hitter of putting balls in play?
Well, he doesn't. He's actually, at the start of his career, he actually did hit a lot of grounders, but he's been more of a fly ball hitter. So he's naturally going to have a lower batting average in balls in play, but not 160. 160 is just crazy.
Yeah, sure it is. I was just wondering what the norm was. So it wouldn't be 160 compared to 300. It would be 160 compared to, I don't know, 250. So
yeah, Zips actually models, Zips actually models his batting average on balls in play. I just pulled it up at about 260. That's about where you expect him to be from the way he hits the ball. Like, he should be a lower batting average player than normal. That means he should be hitting like 220 or 230. He shouldn't be hitting 147. Poor guy.
It breaks my heart.
Yeah. He's also, I don't know, he's also, according to Sports Info Solutions, just unbelievably terrible catcher. Unbelievable. Like, so bad that balls in the dirt, he can't, they just go by. They estimated something like 30 additional pass balls. That is a lot of extra bases from a catcher that you don't really see as a catcher.
So if you go by the old store, whether a player lets bad hitting affect his fielding or lets bad fielding affect his hitting, then that could be the case with Sanchez, which supports the things some of you have said about a change in scenery, because he certainly faces a lot of negative talk based on his fielding.
Yeah, I knew as soon as I picked Sanchez for my breakouts, I'd get some snarky direct messages from Yankees fans who hate him. Because I always keep my DMs open because I like to save my favorite hate mail over the years. Some of them are pretty funny. I had one guy, it wasn't hate mail, but he was very insistent that his opinion of how the developer of Zips was thinking was just as valid as my opinion on what the developer was thinking. And of course I am the developer. So it's like I may be wrong, but I pretty much know what I was thinking when I did something. I mean, I know how it works. Even if it works poorly, I know how it works. You don't have, I'm the guy. So it's emerged like a whole running gag where we joke that I have the developer of Zips trapped in an oubliette in my backyard, just trapped underground, and I feed him and I get the projections. And my mom sometimes goes onto Twitter to see if I'm alive if I don't call her back. So she figures that if I'm dead, that I probably won't be tweeting. And she said she kind of found the end of one of these running jokes that people were doing, like because someone's like, because people will jokingly say, well, you stole those projections from the Zips guy. And my mom calls me and says, Danny, they're calling you a fraud online. You need to stop this before people in baseball see this and think you're a fraud. I'm like, no, it's a running joke, Mom.
And the people in baseball know you're a fraud. It's funny because that's actually how I get in touch with you too. You don't answer an email. I go,
yeah, I'm bad at email.
There he is.
People know to get me on Twitter, but so I tell Mom, like, Mom, please don't read my Twitter anymore, because I do talk about you. So I do tell, my Jewish mom stories about you on online, and I prefer that you don't see when I'm making fun of you. like a few weeks ago, I was dreading it because she got her COVID-19 vaccine.
Congrats.
Yeah, I haven't gotten mine yet. We're still not in the pre-existing conditions in Ohio that get you it are still fairly limited. You have to have like spina bifida, or I don't know how to pronounce that. I probably did it wrong, or a pre-existing heart condition that you've been in the hospital for. So I haven't been able to get my shot yet, but I was excited because when they opened up all the pharmacies opened up their appointments at midnight on this one Sunday night for the people under 70. So I actually had, 5 virtual windows open to different pharmacies online to get her appointment. I got her appointment and I was so excited about that. But then there was the snowstorm. And as the snowstorm approached, I thought, oh God, this means I'm going to have to drive my mom in a foot of snow to her shot. And my mom, in a lot of ways, she was raised Jewish, because my grandfather was Jewish, and she does a lot of the Jewish mom stuff. And I always make fun of her because when she's in the car with me, it's always, Danny, you're so close to the side of the road, Danny. Danny, are you looking at the car in front of you? She doesn't actually talk like that, but I make fun of her in that voice, just like I tease my girlfriend who hasn't had an English accent in 20 years. I tease her with a bad Cockney voice. So I was dreading being in the car with a foot of snow with her in the passenger seat. So I was making fun of her on Twitter, and she's like, I'm not that bad in the car. I'm like, yeah, you are that bad in the car. You actually like hold the arm strap above the door, like the little hook, like every car that comes by, and it's very distracting. I'm like, you stop doing that, or you put your hands on your side, or you have to ride in the back seat. So I prefer that she not be on Twitter when I tell these stories about her.
Yeah, that is true. That is good. All right, what else do we have, kids? What we're gonna still do? Howard's gonna do some quiz for you. Do you have a quiz ready, Howard? You're muted. It's my favorite. Hit the space bar. Hold the space bar down.
I got it.
Come on, Grandpa. Hold the space bar down.
Okay, well, I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Dan. You're welcome. No. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
That was great. Everybody read Dan's stuff as FanGraphs. He also does chats over there, and it's always fun. And,
I still write for ESPN occasionally. They're not my primary pay guys anymore, but I still have a cordial relationship with them, unlike some of their writers.
Yeah. Now
I didn't leave badly. A lot of people have left badly. Okay.
Well, it was really great, Dan. I tell you what, I could have you on every time. Just the knowledge you bring because of how much you focus on it is just fantastic, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, who knew that goofing off on Usenet would have been a good career path?
That is an unusual career path.
I never thought that. It shouldn't have been, and out of principle, it should not have been. But anyway, you all have a good one, and thanks for listening to me ramble.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dan. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Oh man, Dan is really great. Plus, awesome. He's also not just stuck in, I just have to do analysis like in stories. Man, when I go to Ohio for some reason, when Dan and I go out for a Coca-Cola, we laugh and laugh and laugh. So, all right, Howard's up next. He's going to give us a quiz. It's going to be easier. We're training him to take it down a notch, so we'll see if it gets any easier this time. All right, Howard, take it away. Can you share? Do I need to make sure you can share?
Yeah, I hit.
It looks like you can share. You can share.
Can you see it or not?
I'm not seeing it right now yet, Howard.
Not. So let me go back.
As advanced sharing options, who can share? All participants.
I hit share screen. Doesn't that do it?
You may then need to pick the thing you want to share potentially. Maybe.
Oh, I gotta look here.
Let's try this.
Start share. Let's try that.
There it goes.
It's coming. There we go. We got it, Howard.
I hope, is it going to be a plant quiz? Name these plants. Botany.
Pitching.
Yeah. So here's the subject matter for this week.
All right.
This period. Okay, got that? It's relevant. It's relevant that you remember the theme. Why isn't that working?
The thing down there.
There we go.
Here we go.
Okay, write down your answers so you'll remember. Self-scoring. All the questions are worth 10 points except for the last two, which are worth 20 each. And first prize is a copy of Roger Angel's season ticket, which is a really, really interesting, knowledgeable baseball book about the 1987 season. Let's go. Here's question number one. KKKKK. CC Sabathia is one of three left-handed pitchers that record 3,000 career strikeouts. Who are the other two? If this one's not easier, then I don't know what to do.
You did good. You did good.
They get progressively harder.
Well, I think you should always make sure. See, when you do one like this, everybody can get some points. It's very rewarding.
To get everybody into it.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's right.
So are we ready? Are we ready for number two?
Yes.
Consistency. 3 Hall of Famers with 20 seasons of 10 or more wins and 100 or more strikeouts. You don't have to get all 3 to get the points. You get points for each right one. None of these guys predate any of us. Okay, I'm going to try number 3. Who's the only pitcher to hit 2 home runs in a game in which he threw a no-hitter?
All right. It was his birthday the other day. They actually had a video clip of it.
Yeah, the other thing is interesting. He had another game that year where he also hit 2 home runs. Okay, let's move to number 4. Who was the only pitcher to hit a grand slam in the World Series? So I would say these are easier than what I've been doing in the past.
It makes us feel a little better about ourselves.
Right, yeah. Okay, here's number 5. Oops, went too far.
Wow.
12 opening days in a row is pretty significant. I put this in the middle because I actually know the answer to this one. Okay, and if you need a hint, he was a very good left-handed batter. If that helps. He was used as a pinch hitter quite often. Number 6. Lose many, win many. 2 guys since 1920 won and lost 20 games in the same season. They had something quite in common with each other.
Yep.
With each other was redundant. They have something quite in common. Okay, number 7. Getting harder. Which pitcher hit the most pinch hit home runs? One of them was he pinch hit in the bottom of the 13th inning with his team down by 1 run and hit a 2-run walk-off pinch hit homer. Okay, number 8. 9 pitchers won 20 games when the team was in last, but only one did it when his team lost 100 games. Okay, now the questions get hard. 2 more. Which pitcher has the highest career strikeouts per 9 innings for 1,000 innings pitched in Major League Baseball history?
Oh, how about 920 innings?
No, it's got to be 1,000.
Oh man, that is rude. That is.
I'm allowed 2 ball busters, right?
Oh man.
This answer surprised the hell out of me. And the last question. Since 1900, which player has the highest single season batting average with at least 100 plate appearances? Should we move on to the answers?
Yes.
Question 1.
I got one.
More than 3,000 strikeouts, Randy Johnson and Steve Carlton.
I thought we might do pretty good at that one.
Yeah, I was hoping so. So that's 5 points for each correct answer. Question 2, 20 years of wins and strikeouts.
I couldn't think of something.
You got 3 points for 1, 6 points for 2, 10 points if you got all 3.
I got Maddox.
I had Maddox and Ryan. I didn't think of Sutton. I should have known there was a Dodger in there, though. I should have known that.
Well, he didn't get all 20 years with the Dodgers.
No.
Okay, question 3.
Yeah, that's easy.
Rick Wise.
Even I got that one.
Good.
That's a good one. That's one of my favorite stats.
Mm-hmm.
The hell of a day.
Question 4. Grand Slam in the World Series. Dave McNally.
Nope. That's a good one.
Question 5. Opening day is Robin Roberts.
Nope.
I remember that because I was 1950s when I started getting really into baseball.
Yeah, and it's kind of a sucker question because that's one of the things Tom Seaver's famous for. Right. He only started 10.
Right. That's a long time, 12 in a row. Okay, question 6. 20 wins, 20 losses.
Yep.
And the thing they have in common is they're both knuckleball.
Oh, your hint helped me a lot on that one.
Yeah. I knew it was Wood, and I still wrote down Lowich. I knew it. I was like, I have the base 1973 baseball card right in my head, and I still wrote down Lowich. Ooh.
How about Murray Dixon?
Yeah.
Murray Dixon won 20 and lost 20, didn't he?
I don't think so.
Murray.
Somebody want to check that out?
Early 50s Pirates. Yeah, we'll check that.
Yeah, please do. I don't want to leave the screen. Here's question 7. Gary Peters is the one who has 4 pinch hit home runs. He was obviously a very good pitcher. Hitter. Wasn't a bad pitcher either.
He did not in the same season.
No, career.
No, Murray Dixon did not do it in the same season.
Oh, okay.
He was 20 and 16, then he was 14 and 21, and then he was 10 and 20, and 10 and 19, but he didn't win 20 and lose 20. Gary Peters, White Sox.
Okay, here's question 20. 20 wins on a 100-loss team.
Ed Garver.
Yeah, I started thinking St. Louis Browns, but I couldn't figure out who in the world would have done it for.
Well, I think there was only 2 people memorable from the Browns in the 50s, Garver and Roy Seaver.
The thing is that Carlton famously did that in 72, but I think the Phillies only lost 97 games.
Yeah, I was thinking Carlton too. That's
okay. So question 9's coming up. This is the pitcher who has the highest strikeout for 9 innings for 1,000 innings pitched.
Oh wow!
Oh, I was amazed at this answer.
Yeah, I'm surprised he has 1,000 innings pitched.
Yeah.
Because, if you go with 920 innings, Billy Wagner has 2 more. Like he struck out 13 or 14 per 9. Yeah. So that's a really close cutoff.
Well, except it's a round number. 920 is kind of a weird number.
Roundish.
Okay, last question. Highest batting average for 100 at-bats in this season.
Is that still correct?
I believe so.
I thought so. This is something that that is probably is correct, but it was something Mark Armour and I were talking about with the official announcement that the Negro Leagues are Major League, but apparently the guy that hit there must not have hit that high. That's a lot higher than I thought.
I have to admit that none of these questions take into account the
consider that. Yes, I don't think necessarily anyone would do it, but that would be one.
So the hint here was, if you recall, pitching, and also hitting. Even the hitting questions were pitches.
Yeah. Yes, that was excellent.
That's great, Howard.
Thanks, Howard.
That was great.
I ended up with 31 points.
You have to remember is that the Negro Leagues haven't officially been approved by Major League Baseball to join, and the stats haven't been incorporated yet. So those really can't apply.
No, okay.
So
not yet.
So the next couple of times, I'm going to have to make a disclaimer, because I got about 30 or 40 questions backed up that don't take that into account.
Well, if you're trying to check these, and I assume you do check them against Baseball Reference or something,
right?
When they make the official announcement, Sean already has it all updated.
Yeah.
Sean Foreman already has Baseball Reference updated, so he's ready to flip the switch, and so everything you checked would still be correct.
No.
So I got 31. What's the highest?
I got 20.
I got Johnson and Carlton, Maddox and Ryan, Wise, and Necro.
Yeah, I was I had 33. Of course, I was 23 after the first 3 questions.
It was downhill fast after that.
So does anyone higher than 33?
Well, I had 40. But I've already got a copy of that book, so if somebody, if you want to give it to the second person.
I have a book by Roger Kahn. Let me see. Let me just check.
Hey, Francis has all the books. Look behind him. Look at all those books.
About 10 of them have been read.
How many books do you have, Francis?
Oh, I got a ton. More than I want.
Some of mine hadn't even been colored in.
I'm trying to get rid of them. Well, I was going to try to sell them, and then COVID came along, and now, there's no gathering or anything.
A baseball adult coloring book. Now that's something I've never thought about.
Seriously, I don't need the book. I've got the book. That's fine.
Francis, do you have Memories of Summer by Roger Kahn?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Memories of Summer by it won't show.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yes, I do have that one too. Yes,
I have one more. Pennant Races by Dave Anderson.
You're getting this book, Francis.
No, I don't have that
the
one.
book.
Okay, Francis. So,
but I'm not.
Library.
I don't believe. No, I don't have that third book. But again, if anybody else wants it, particularly, but that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, what is that cover? Pennant Races from? Does that go back a few years?
Oh yes. I think, the first pennant race is 1908 in Fred Merkel.
I think that was published in the 90s. I think that
goes through the 90s.
Yeah, the last one is 93.
Yeah.
1908 to 1993. So when and if we ever have an in-person meeting, I'll bring the book.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I appreciate it. Again, if anybody else wants the book a lot, I'll be glad to.
I don't know. I'm not, Francis, I'm not into that. They got to get the questions right.
Okay. Well, I hope we will be able to meet pretty soon.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's fine. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Howard. Thank you very much. That was very enjoyable. Absolutely. The questions are really fantastic.
Yeah, that was a good set of questions, Howard.
Yeah, I will say I lucked out on a couple of guesses.
You really, that starting out with one people can get, that really gets us in.
Well, I got, a couple of them I didn't have, I knew, but then there were a couple I was down to 3 names and selected one and got it.
Yeah. Oh, that is good. So Keith, when I sent a note out about the 6th one, sorry I didn't get the thing. It's really strange because I look at, if you want to know how this is done, I reach out to SABR. SABR sends the link, but if anyone is bumped up on either side of us, I have to adjust, right? Our time because of that. So we could have done it last weekend, but we'd have had to go from 11:30 to 1:15 or something strange like that, just because of where people select their other chapters select their times, as well as committees. So that's why I switched to this. It also seems that we have longer meetings than the other people on Zoom. So I don't know. Feel free. Because somebody did sign up for 3 o'clock, we'll try to cut out 15 minutes before that in case they want to come in. Everybody starts coming in and hello and getting there. So I sent it out. I'm interested because Keith sent back a bunch of funny stuff about staying usual, and we went back and forth a little bit in a couple of emails. But he had a really interesting picture, and he had put some slides together. So I was like, "Hey, you want to share a little story around that?" And he said, "I reckon." And so, Keith, without further ado, you want to show us something? Oh, before you do that, in case we get hit up to 2:30, does anybody have anything else they want to jump in or share or say, hey, I want to put something together for our next meeting? Excellent. Tom does, but Tom just got back from a kayak trip. So he's going to go unload the car. So that's great. And the second thing is, before people start dropping is, what date do I want to get? So what's opening day?
April 1st.
April 1st. Do we want to have the meeting right after opening day, right before opening day?
Depends on whether the Mets win or lose.
April 1st is a Thursday.
Yeah. So April 3rd is obviously a perfectly acceptable day. Show of hands, we just lost somebody.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not going anywhere because I'm not going to have a vaccine. I am so far down the list. The only person further down the list than me is Kindig.
So actually, it's funny you say that because critical manufacturing personnel, and we actually do make drug for.
Me too.
You have to go on site though.
Yes, every stinking day. It's been awful. It's been awful.
I might be looking into it in a few weeks, but
yeah. Well, my wife needs to get it too, but I don't. Vaccine. I'm very glad it's rolling out quickly. I'm very glad that there'll be a lot, but I don't see an in-person thing before we get to September call-ups for that. Certainly for me, I hope everyone older than me has gotten their shots or is queued up getting their shots, because it's really an exciting aspect of and having worked in the pharma.
I've been lucky. I got both of mine, but I'm 76 years old, so.
Yeah, my mom got both of hers. It was a very emotional moment. I have 5 brothers and sisters. We all went for her, and she got it on her 80th birthday.
Yeah.
We all went and had it. We still all wore masks and everything, but we hadn't seen her in a year. So it was when you have a big family, canceling Christmas and Thanksgiving where you have all these big meals is really hard on mom. So it was really great that we got to see her. So I hope everybody is getting vaccines. I promise you they're safe as anything else we're ever going to do in pharma. And having worked in pharma for 23 years, it's very rewarding to see, when people worry about whether or not it was made too fast, it could always be done this fast. The gap is if the pharma companies had to pay for it being unsuccessful, it wouldn't have happened. Pharma companies being able to produce product at risk because we're going to be financially compensated made all the difference in the world. It's just as safe. They still did all the trials. They just could stack them without wait. They didn't have to wait on funding. They didn't have to worry about things like that. So those really why people say it went too fast. No, they did the trials. They just didn't have to wait on all the approval periods. They didn't have to stand in line for that, which is what normally happens in the development of a drug. And doing things at risk, manufacturing before approval is a kooky thing that no one would ever do. But in this case, because they were having the risk taken off of them, they could. Second thing is a vaccine of pharmaceutical vaccines that make it to phase 3 as an injectable. It's something like 80% end up getting approved. Because once you've already passed all of the development products, both from a pharma matrix formulation issue and toxicity issues, which is when you get to phase 3, then almost all vaccines get through at that point. They know what they're doing. So I look forward to everybody getting it so we can all get together. Jeff, did I say anything wrong just then? You can get in there.
I don't know the stats that you just said, but everything else tracks. I mean, the whole thing about being singularly focused on one thing that is going to not lose you hundreds of millions of dollars if it fails does make a big difference.
Yeah, and you also get to see that what also happened is the entire world was working on the same thing at the same time. So you had every scientist chiming in that could help with this. And people say, oh, they found the vaccine in 2 weeks. No, they didn't. The BioNTech have been working on this for 10 years from when the last SARS came up. So we were already way down the road in the development for a vaccine of a molecule like this. Yes, they still had to adjust. And that's you're going to see the adjustments to this for the other variants that pop up. We're not working from a blank slate. Anyway, thanks, Jeff, for your work in pharma. Thanks all the pharma people. really a triumph of saving people's lives. All right, that was my spiel. All right, Keith, are you ready now?
Yeah, I'm ready. We're going to talk about beer and baseball, which is always a good topic in March.
It's a great thing.
And actually Irish beer at that. So if anybody's on the St. Patrick's Day countdown, you're in luck. And of course, Howard, just for you, we've got the Mets come involved in this in some way, shape, or form, as they always do. So, Chris, if you could share the screen.
You can share the screen. You can share.
Let's see.
Down at the bottom.
Share screen. There we go. Screen 2. All right. Share. Okay, sweet.
Perfect.
I downloaded a SABR book on the John Thorne emailed, and this was the cover of it. It was, I think, Orrin Peterson, baseball in the 19th century. And it this poster actually sold for $180,000 on one of those organized criminal websites, Heritage Auctions. But it's the first baseball poster that actually links beer and baseball together. It was done in 1889, and involves something called Burke beer, E&J Burke Pale Ale, and foreign export stout, and the Giants and the Cubs. And it's also both the players got compensated for $300 and a case of beer to go with it. So they were very well compensated by that. Well, it turns out there's a lot more to the story, and it's kind of interesting because I know a little bit more about E&J Burke than the average person for a bizarre set of reasons. The other thing on this poster I wanted to point out to it, on the bottom of the poster there in the front of the players, there's a little red box and a baseball. And that, of course, would mean that it's a Spalding ball in a box, and that's the league #1 ball. And I think it's no surprise that the poster came out in 1889. And there are only supposedly 3 in existence in the world. So let's see. What happened here? Oh, need to hit that button. All right. So it turns out, let's see. The reason why the Burkes are interesting and involved in this is the Burkes actually were members of the Guinness family. Edward and John Burke were grandsons of old man Arthur Guinness, and actually the grandsons of their 7th child of Olivia and Arthur Burke of Guinness. And as a result, the Burkes made a deal that they'll go to America and export Guinness from Ireland to the colonies, if you will. And so the Guinnesses gave the Burkes the exclusive export contract and bottling contract for Guinness in Australia, New Zealand, and the United States, and of all places, Malaysia, too. And so John Burke left Ireland and actually became their American cousin, while other Burkes moved to Australia, and that was written up by a guy named Rod Smith, who actually married one of the descendants of the Burke family. And so it's important because when we look at the tour of 1889, the World Tour, we see that really that these guys followed the flag, and the flag was the Union Jack. And you could say they also followed the route of Burke's beer. So when they landed in New Zealand, the hotel served nothing but Guinness through Burke. In Australia, it was the Burke's beer. And then as they worked their way around to coal ports served by the Royal Navy, Burke's beer was there as well. The other interesting aspect is that we know, too, that the trip actually was, quote, co-sponsored, if you will, by the Royal Mail, because all the shipping lines had exclusive Royal Mail contracts. And that's one reason why they actually were a day late getting to Hawaii and New Zealand and Australia, because the Royal Mail train was a day late leaving arriving in San Francisco. So one of the fascinating things then is when we get to Australia, we really see how these guys more than adequately participate in drinking lots of adult beverages. It's it's the middle of the summer. It's pretty hot, and so whether they're in Auckland or Adelaide or even in Colombo, the only beer served there would be Burke's Export. And the other thing that's really fascinating is this is the picture from the game in Sydney, and it's a little hard to see, but if you look between the pitcher and catcher, or between the batter and the catcher, right there's a three-letter word called BAR. And unlike baseball in the 19th century or the National League, Australians had no difficulty having a bar right in the middle of the ballpark. And I thought it was really kind of fascinating that, the rules of National League being proper and prim and pristine and saying we're not the beer and whiskey league. Once you leave America in that puritanical situation, different rules apply, and never more so in Australia. And it's actually pretty fascinating that Harry Palmer, who traveled with the team, noted that the heat in Australia, which is the middle of the summer and well over 100 degrees, combined with way too much beer and the obligatory toast by every single Australian dignitary the team met, kind of wore them out. And famously, Cannonball Crane missed a photo shoot in Sydney and actually missed the whole trip to South Australia because he was recovering. And when we take a closer look at the tour, we realize that there's plenty of lubrication going along, and from Hawaii, even on the boat itself, and then finally in the first game in Australia, which I find fascinating. The game was tied, and so after the fifth inning, the Lord Mayor of Sydney, who was actually the Queen's emissary to the government there, stopped the game, walked out into the field and started making a series of champagne toasts to the Queen, the President of the United States, the ball players. And then after they were finished, then the game resumed, which of course, Mark Lamster officially noted as saying that for some reason the boys retook the field but were unable to score. So kind of wonder why, right? Well, it turns out that not only abroad, but back home in the U.S., E&J Burke had the U.S. covered. It was their market. And so they had a series of brands that they sponsored and imported and were bottled in the U.S. From Boston all the way to Honolulu. Local liquor stores would advertise, we are the proud providers of and the exclusive providers of E&J Burke ales and porters. And for all those in St. Louis, since you know that not much beverages occur in St. Louis, so back then you were lucky you could actually get your own exclusive ginger ale, also from Ireland, imported by the Burke brothers, known as C&C, Cantrell and Cochran ginger ale and club soda. And of course, you should be aware of imitations in St. Louis, that you should only have the original. In New Orleans, they imported champagne as well. And this ad is actually from 1872 from South Carolina newspaper. And it's reminding everyone that the boat is coming in from England, and it's got Guinness Stout and Pale Ale on it, with the E&J Burke logo and patented trademarks. And it's showing you the official trademarks of Burke. That's kind of the cap, a red cap and a white cap. It turns out as early as 1869, the Burke Company lawyers were advertising that they were cracking down on fakes and going after them and enforcing of their trademark. Interesting enough, the building is still standing. It's on 46th Street in New York in big letters saying E&J Burke. The company really lasted to Prohibition, and then of course tried to make bottled jam and some other things. But the building's still there. Interesting enough, Mr. Burke, as he emigrated to America, became exceptionally wealthy. So much so that he decided to build this house, and he nicknamed it Woodlands. It was 19 acres and just beyond large, if you can imagine. It turns out, though, that by this time in the 1880s, the Guinness family was becoming one of the wealthiest families in the entire world, as well as in Ireland. And there was kind of a mansion race going on within the family. And so he, as the American cousin, was trying to keep up with the rest of his family. Interestingly enough, though, even though Guinness advertises being good for you or good for your health, John Burke died of liver poisoning, I think from probably drinking too much beer and some other things. And so he dies not too long after the house is built in 1892. And the entire company then gets reorganized in 1893, a year later. And it loses all its Americans on the board of trustees and board of directors. So from 1893 on, it becomes exclusively an Irish and British company. So that advertising then becomes even more important because there's no American connection anymore with this company. And in fact, there's no more, quote, Burke left in E&J Burke. Now, it turns out that tragedy continues along with the Burke family. And the oldest Burke son actually was a Rough Rider with Teddy Roosevelt. Unfortunately, he probably developed malaria, and then the treatment was morphine and some other issues. And so he would have developed PTSD as we know it now. But at the beginning of World War I, he joined something called the Home Guard. And after a month or two of boot camp, he was just completely broken. And Christmas Eve, 1915, he actually commits suicide, which is really tragic, leaving his family kind of all alone there in Baltimore. Turns out that the second daughter actually dies in a horrible carriage accident. And she leaves her family of three little children to be raised by their father. She, though, was exceptionally well liked, and she was given a memorial window in the church in New Jersey, and that's it there. And so, interesting enough, not only does the Burke family lose its kind of business, the family itself gets reduced to one person. The interesting thing, though, here is that Mabel Burke marries a fellow named Mr. Walker, and Mr. Walker has an interesting little sporting tradition, and that is he's a member of something called the Staten Island Cricket and Baseball Club. And the Staten Island Baseball it's now called the Staten Island Cricket Club. But back in the 1870s and 80s, they were one of the first places in New York to play baseball as well. And so I found this scorecard that was in the newspaper. And I think it's the championship of Staten Island, which the Staten Island CC and BBC won. And we go down to the slot number 9 there. There's a guy named G.Y.G. Walker, and that's Mabel's husband before they got married. And I think this is a golf tournament, and that's what. But the cricket club ends up winning, and then we have a picture down below as a history of the site of them watching a cricket match. It turns out, though, that the cricket club leaves that location to a different one in Staten Island, and believe it or not, or below and behold, it becomes the 1986 home for everyone's favorite New York Mets. And for 2 seasons, the Mets played there. And then one season, the Giants played there as their first polo grounds actually got plowed through by the city of New York in the street. So we have this unique collection of beer leading kind of to baseball in Staten Island. And that leads us really to the most interesting little link and facet. That same spot in Staten Island where the cricket club, where the cricket and baseball club used to play tennis and golf and probably even baseball too, where the original New York Mets achieved their great glories of the 1880s. It's also the same spot where the Staten Island Yankees used to play. And so interestingly enough, it's also one of the teams that got terminated this year when baseball contracted. So it's an interesting little spot. It's probably the most beautiful spot in New York and probably one of the most inaccessible as well, which probably led a lot to the team's decline. And then how I know much more about the Burks, it turns out that when I was 4 years old, my parents bought the Burks house, or what's left of it. And so I wasn't born in 1945. That was a house picture that was given to us by one of the people who owned it beforehand. And that's what it looked like when my parents lived there, when we lived there. So it's an interesting little story of just how beer and baseball go way back when. And when you look at this poster, it means kind of a lot more from both a sense of international baseball and ties back to our beautiful New York Mets. So that's the little story, and we'll go from there.
Oh, that was awesome. Oh, man. So I want to make sure I got this right. The E&J Burke, they were bringing in the Guinness product, right?
Yeah. They were bottling and the exclusive exporters of Guinness Stout and Guinness and actually Bass Ale too, to the colonies. So there was Guinness is it said that they had 21 children, 10 of which survived, and their mother was the 7th child, and she made a deal with her brothers that, we'll go to the colonies for you and bring the beer. And so E&J Burke was the export wing of the Guinness beer throughout the world and throughout really the British Empire.
That's just amazing. That is so cool.
Yeah, and so you never hear about them because it's long gone now, and Guinness actually took over that and became Guinness Export. Now, of course, we all know about Guinness as straight Guinness. And of the whole family, there are Burke cousins from New Zealand, Australia, and the United States still as well. But it's a fascinating little poster, and it's for me, it helps tie in the whole story of the World Tour of, what do these guys do? Because they spent more time drinking than playing baseball.
Keith, is the Chicago player Spalding?
Yeah.
And who's the New York player?
Oh, no, that's Cap Anson. And
okay.
That is, I think, what's his name? Tierney, the captain of the Giants at the time. I have it written. It's in the front piece of the book, the SABR book. I think the book is called, which you can download for free. It's Owen Preston Baseball in the 1880s.
Okay.
Series of newspaper clippings. But they're the two captains of the teams. And the Giants had just won the pennant, the first two, 88 and 89, which is why you have the championship banner going.
Yeah.
And it's also the last year that the Chicago team was called the White Sox, as you can tell by Cap Anson's black stockings. The next year they became the Colts, and then Charlie Comiskey renames his, I think, Players League team, the Brotherhood team, the Chicago White Sox.
It is really, really cool.
Yeah, and so the little the picture on the bottom, there's a piece of paper that looks like an official scroll with a seal on it. Yeah. That actually is a letter from Arthur Guinness saying that he approves of Burke beer, or the Burke brothers, which he should because they're his grandsons.
We went right before the COVID set in December. we actually went to Dublin for a long weekend,
right.
and went to the Guinness place. It was really fantastic. But they it's really amazing how that ties out.
Yeah, what to me is interesting is that this is the second official paid advertisement in baseball. I think the first one was Harry Wright or George Wright doing something in Boston, but this is the first connection we have to. So this is the second paid baseball poster, if you will, or endorsed baseball poster. It's also the first poster of beer and baseball done when the National League was still sticking to the notion that it was not the beer and whiskey league. In fact, to go even further, as the Chicago team, I guess the White Sox or Cubs we call them, started losing more games than winning in the late 1880s, Albert Spalding hired detectives to chase after his players because he thought they were drinking too much. And then all of a sudden, they were on the world tour, which could easily be, I told Chris, it could easily be Fred Pfeiffer's booze cruise, the way how much they drank. And then here in 1889, when they get back, here this one poster shows up, them endorsing, of all things, an Irish beer by none other than Cap Anson. So it's just a fascinating little thing. And then, of course, once the company sells or gets taken back by the Irish cousins, there's no more American connection to it, and therefore no more kind of need to advertise in America with baseball.
That was fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to bring something like this to the rest of the chapter. It's very kind of you. Anybody have any other questions or comments for Keith?
I'm thirsty.
I can't help you with that.
And that's why you see my screen go blank. I have to run downstairs.
Yeah.
You talked me into it.
I saw you drinking.
Yeah.
Well, it's 5 o'clock in Bermuda.
Is it an Irish beer?
No,
it's probably
actually,
5 o'clock in Ireland for sure.
Yeah, it is a bourbon barrel finished beer, but it is out of like where you can get the bourbon barrels for a song. It is very tasty. It adds a nice little to it. That was really, really terrific, Keith.
Yeah. Well,
so you can unshare before anything untoward happens. I love that poster though. I love that poster. It almost looks like it's very modern, like Todd Radom or somebody would have done. So
it's a fantastic poster. It's and again, it's sold. There's supposedly only 3 of them in the world, and that one sold at auction last year for $188,000, plus the auction house commission, which might have been 20%. So somebody spent over $200,000 on that thing.
Was it John Thorne? That is one of my favorite things. I don't know if y'all know that Keith Olbermann does that. So Keith Olbermann has used his finances from his career to buy really, really expensive. Like he has the Mookie Wilson baseball, right? That flub. So he has that ball. Well, at least maybe he does. But it's really amazing what some people. But once you reach that, I have so much money, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Preserve history. That'd be great.
Yeah. So the thing, though, I really find interesting with this poster is the 2 little Spalding connections to it, just with the ball and the bat and the box, and the bat too with the little trademark black barrel.
Yeah,
is clearly another Spalding bat that the team used in the 1880s as well. So it's what struck me was that it was, the same guy who hired detectives to keep an eye on his players from drinking too much, was more than happy to let his equipment be used as props in selling baseball and beer together.
That
it's
is
just one of
terrific.
those things.
All right. So what we want to talk about next? It's coming up on 2:30. Everybody can go have a nice afternoon. My wife went on a hike, so she didn't have to listen to me talk about all this stuff. So that's good. I'm gonna check that. Let me check the SABR calendar. I don't know how often you go to SABR, but I do want to note this. If you are a member of only this chapter, you might consider being a member of the other chapters. So you're Cardinals fans, for example, you can be a member of the St. Louis chapter and get all of their stuff. You don't have to be a member of this chapter. You can be a member of any chapter you want, whether you're there or not. Certainly, and that's one of the things that Zoom is going to allow you to. All the St. Louis stuff is Zoom. So go into sabr.org. Actually, I'll share my screen because I'm doing it now. Maybe I won't.
All the St. Louis stuff is Zoom, but all the St. Louis stuff is not recorded. So if that's the only way to do it, if you're a Cardinals fan, you can only do Zoom recordings. They're not any there. So if you want to do it, you have to join them live.
Am I sharing this screen properly?
Yes.
So you can see, so I'm in these other groups, and you can just click, right? Now, you'll note that I'm a member of these other groups. And one of the things is, if you, whatever chapter you belong to, you also get notifications from adjacent chapters to help us grow, because we were the only North Carolina chapter for a really long time, right? There's a Charlotte chapter. And so if you live in Asheboro, as an example, it might be helpful for you to join that chapter. But you just go in, you go to available groups, you search for a group, St. Louis. I don't know if St. Louis is a chapter. And I, of course, would reject them.
Bob Bragg chapter. It's in St. Louis.
That says my groups. I'm not looking at that. You Bobby Bragan.
Bobby
Brogue. B-R-O-E-G.
Thank you. Brogue, yes.
No, that's the Dallas Fort Worth. Which one?
Bob, B-R-O-E-G, I believe. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Sports writer.
Bob.
Yeah.
I think you said it Bragg, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're not a member and you want to participate in this, please join these chapters, because everybody's just doing it this way, right? And recording is obviously hit or miss. Sometimes I turn off the recording if it's because it starts as soon as I start it, and I don't always remember to turn it back on. So apologies for that. It's really one of those strange things. So I want you to look at any committees. Committees are having Zoom meetings. Join and learn as much as you want. I mean, obviously, even participation in this, you can just sit there and listen. It's just a great way to spend and look at the SABR calendar. That's the other thing I wanted to do on this. If I can find the SABR calendar. Calendar. You'd think this would have a quick link, but it's not. But on the SABR calendar, you could see all of the upcoming events, right? Like in the email, you go to the SABR calendar and it shows you all the events, announcements. SABR calendar. Okay. I don't see the SABR calendar.
It's in every This Week in SABR.
Yeah. But go into the calendar and you can see all of the events. Yes, they also list them in there, but you can go in and see all of the events that are coming up and really help you out in that regard. And so I have to do that when I go to schedule a meeting. I'm also chair of some variety of a couple of committees and for the Baseball Think Factory chapters. We have them. And the Baseball Think Factory is not regional. So it has people in Oregon and people in Boston. And so trying to get everyone a time that they can participate is really good. You should look at the chartered communities as well. They're not listed as chapters, but for all intents and purposes, because if you're a big reader, one of the new chartered communities that you can be a member of all you want is about book reading. It's really founded by key authors that everybody would really enjoy participating. Ralph Carhart is one of them, and he spoke last time. So really jump in there and enjoy that. Elections are coming up for the board. If you want to jump on the board, I don't think that Tyrone Brooks is running again. So there's probably an open seat if somebody wants to be on the board of directors. I did my tenure, 5 years. I served for all of us. And so other people should, if that's something they want to do, get in there. Mark Armour are going to be rerunning. You feel bad for Mark a little bit because he's the first president that, of course, had no conventions. So
Keith, I think, Chris, I think that, I'm sorry, Chris, I ought to know your name after all these years.
Once or twice.
I believe the deadline, I'm not running.
Oh, it was the end of February.
I believe the deadline for declaring candidacy was something like February 26th.
You're probably right. Withdrawal, no one can apply now, but you should think about it for next year. And also, if you didn't see the next convention is still, we're just rolling to have it in Baltimore, and we got a much more favorable date for next year. In August. I think if we'd have had an August of this year, we might have held out to see if we could have a live one, but they didn't have dates available. We were going to have to do it on Father's Day weekend, which was not a good weekend anyway. So now the August in Baltimore is going to be fantastic. And it's going to be the 50th celebration because of COVID ruined everything.
And COVID actually has been a blessing to SABR because of Zoom, because so many people are stuck at home and joining SABR. So surely you feel bad for Mark that he's heading up an organization with no conviction, but you also feel good for him because he's able to expose a lot of people to SABR that otherwise would go, what is this?
Yes. Hey, Ryan, thanks for bringing that up because, and this is something that I don't know how it's going to work, but when we go back to in-person meetings, they will also be Zoom meetings. So if you can't make it to the facility and you just want to join in, we're going to figure out how to make it always a Zoom meeting. Just some of us might be in the same room.
That'd be good because I am from Columbus, Indiana, and one of my favorite things to do is go around to different chapters and stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I didn't realize.
Oh, yes.
Oh, so are you a member of our thing or did you just select the thing when you got the notification?
I'm a member of the board in Louisville, but I just join a lot of chapters and go around and just looking on meetings and stuff. So I have no life, Chris. I have no life at all.
That's a pretty good life, going to baseball conversations. It's pretty fun. Certainly during COVID, we're all living that.
Yeah, when you're single, you can get away with a lot of it.
Well, I'll wrap it up here. Does anyone else have anything else? Elena? Oh. All right. Well, Gary, it's good to see all of you. And I will set up a meeting for April 3rd once I find the calendar and can check it. And then we'll do approximately the same on April 3rd. If there is a particular speaker you would like to have, send me an email saying, Dan and I are really good friends. We've been friends for a really long time. Jay Jaffe and I, Rob and I, Mark. I have a lot of friends that do this. And so it's very easy to get people who do stuff like that. But you may say, instead of hearing from Dan Szymborski again, I would like to hear from person X, and I'll see what I can do. Obviously, Dan can help me get them. If it's some other writers or, I don't know who else we can get.
What Zoom has done, Chris, is I book speakers for our Louisville chapter, and it's opened up a whole bunch of speakers ordinarily we wouldn't be able to get because they live in Kansas or wherever. You know, it's another good thing.
Hey, you know, Ryan, if you're bored, you could send me a list of people you've reached out to, and I'll do the same because then we could do it. Maybe we can get some St. Louis people to talk to us that are more pro Cardinal. But I want to try to get somebody to make all of us happy.
You know, I'm still reeling from the Lou Brock trade. Being a Cubs fan.
Yeah, I don't. But because we know a lot of those people, you know, it's not impossible to get writers that are more local or analysts that are more local to your team. So they really want to focus on your team.
Yeah. Hey, are we knocked off at 2:30?
We are not knocked off at 2:30, but there is another group that comes on right after us. So unless you have something specific to bring up, I thought I would let the next group jump in.
I'm just curious, but it would be a long answer. What is happening with the minor leagues? But that would be a long answer.
Man, that's a good question. And I hate, you know what I'll do? Let's try to get Mike Burling on. So Mike Burling is obviously, of course, one of the risks of that is he can't step out of line, I imagine.
I tell you what a good thing to do, Chris, is ask Scott Bush himself to do it.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So he and J.J. Cooper, and J.J. Cooper is local to North Carolina as well. He's a Baseball America guy, but they pushed him back a month. But now that today a report came out about alternate sites. So the answer is no one, including Major League and Minor League Baseball, know what is going to happen with the minor leagues yet. I have 2 tickets for opening day at Bull Durham Stadium, but I have no idea when that is. So it's just disappointing. Certainly, if you live in a city like we do, where the Durham Bulls are, 1, they're a great minor league team. 2, their major league team is really awesome right now, and it's a great park in beautiful weather. Nah, just nothing. So it's really hard. So, but I do think Mike Burling would be an interesting person to listen to talk about those things. I did have Scott come on and a couple of times ago and talk about what's happening with the minor leagues. So Scott is, because he worked in the minor leagues before doing this, so he knows a lot of people in the minor leagues. He has a lot of information.
There may be a webinar that was conducted a couple of weeks ago that probably some of you saw, that Scott, J.J. Cooper and Scott Bush conducted, which was very informative at the time. It's probably still, most of it is still probably up to date, but there have been a few changes, but it was a very useful hour. It was a 1-hour webinar, which is probably on the recording.
And it's probably, it's probably on the site.
It is recorded. It was recorded by the SABR Rocky Mountain chapter in Denver.
Okay.
Thank you, Ryan. That is another thing I'll try to do in my emails, provide more links. I know that does everybody read the regular email? I do. Can always look to see if a new person joined our chapter, and then I email them and say, hey, if I remember, but I tried. So I will. Do y'all want me to send other things that are on the site, or do we go enough? And that's probably not necessary. It's redundant. Because I know sometimes you get 3 or 4 SABR emails in a row. You might go, I'm not reading all 5 of them at the same time, right? So maybe I will, maybe I won't. Anyway, well, thanks everybody for coming, and I'll set something up for April 3rd, same 12 to 2:30, something like that, if that works for everybody, and we'll see you at the ballpark. All right. Y'all have a great day.
Hey,
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Hey,
Bye-bye.
thanks.